My voice is audible to all of you.
Yes, so good afternoon, Sudeep
Good
sir.
afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
I'm sir. How about you?
Fine, ma'am. So today I'm going to take this session,
Sir.
and whenever I need to start, just ping me, and then we will start. Okay?
Yes, sir. We'll be starting in another while only. It's
Yeah,
time
no
to start.
problem.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let me share my screen. Okay.
Okay, sir. So good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll have Dr. Sudeep Tanwar as the presenter for the day. Dr. Sudeep is working as an associate professor in computer science engineering department at Nirma University, Ahmedabad, and he is also a visiting professor in Wysokołowski University in Poland and University of Pitești, Romania. He has authored and co-authored over 200 plus publications in various journals. That includes 90 plus journal papers and 150 plus of them are indexed in Scopus. He has also authored or edited around 24 books, and along with that, he has received many national awards for his contribution to academics. So he will be taking your session for today. Now over to you, Sudeep sir. I'm sorry
Okay.
for that spellings of the university in Poland.
No,
Actually,
no
I'm not
problem.
able
No
to pronounce
problem. No
properly.
problem. It's a Vysokołowski University, Jan Vysokołowski University.
Okay,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah, because in Polish pronunciation remains to be a problem.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah. I believe that Sakshi, while you have scheduled this meeting now, because we are also using Cisco Webex for our academic activities, you have
Okay.
not, you have to select that this tone now. Whenever any student joined and left, then this tone will come. So here,
Yes, sir.
while scheduling, there is one option. You have to select that option, no tone. So
Okay,
that is
sir.
not going to disturb. That is not going to disturb the speaker and to the other students that whenever someone is left and again join. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
sir. I'll disable that option.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay. So now we will start. A very good afternoon to all of you. I believe that in the previous sessions, Dr. Neeraj has already explained you about what exactly the meaning of blockchain, what are the internals of the blockchain, what are the fundamentals related to the blockchain. So in today talk, this is the outline of today talk. In next 1.5 hours, we are going to discuss about how this Bitcoin proof of work extend the Hashcash proof of work based system. So we are going to see that how the proof of work based system works, and we will see that why there is a need of consensus, okay, and how to develop a methodology to protect the blockchain by applying a kind of a distributed consensus. Primarily, we will see that why there is a need of consensus. Very important topic in blockchain consensus mechanism. And as a student or as a faculty, you can devise your own consensus protocol, which is a kind of a novel contribution from your side, depending upon the application in which you are working. Okay. So next we are going to discuss about some of the consensus mechanism, and we can divide the consensus mechanism into two parts. The first part is because that these consensus mechanisms are dependent on the basically the environment. So I think you people are already aware about that in blockchain we are having two kind of environment. One is the open environment, which we can also call it as a public environment, and second one is the permission environment, or which we can call it as a private environment. Okay. So for both the categories, we are having different category of consensus mechanism. So today we are going to discuss the consensus mechanism related to the permission-less environment. When my environment is public environment, that means any user can join the network at any instant of time. Okay, so that we are going to discuss, and then at the last we are going to see that how these consensus algorithm provide the security to the blockchain-based network. So this is the outline. Let me open the pointer so that thing becomes easy for you. So these are the outline of today presentation, and maybe in the next lecture I am going to validate these concepts, going to implement these concept, not all, but at least proof of work, how you are going to implement. If someone going to implement the proof of work based system, then how you are going to implement this proof of work in Java. Okay, that I am going to highlight in the next lecture. if the time permit in today lecture also. Now, just to start, that what exactly the Bitcoin based proof of work based system. So as its name suggests, proof of work, what exactly the meaning of proof of work? That means whatever work you have carried out in terms of creating, or I'm not contexting, or I'm not telling in terms of the blockchain, I'm telling in general first, then we will come to the blockchain, that what exactly the meaning of proof of work in the blockchain. So let's say in case someone has given some task, okay, and how will you prove that you have performed this particular task? So that means you have to validate your task, you have to validate. So that we can call it as a proof of work. That means you have to validate your idea basically. So prior to proof of work or directly jumping to the proof of work based system, there is a concept of Hashcash mechanism in the blockchain. So what exactly the meaning of Hashcash based mechanism in the blockchain? So primarily this Hashcash based mechanism in the blockchain is used to to avoid this kind of bulk emailing. Let's say for example, you want to send multiple emails simultaneously at the same time, and the entire network you want to flood. Okay, so how you are going to ignore it? How you are going to provide a kind of a security in your system so that the bulk emailing you are going to stop? So for this particular purpose, Hashcash based consensus mechanisms are used. Now, based upon this Hashcash proof of work based system, the what the miner need to do. So here, ultimately in this particular slide, if you refer the graphical representation, we are having three blocks: block number one, block number two, and block number three. Inside the block, we are having multiple transactions. Okay. So why we have placed here question mark? Because at the start of the mining procedure, no one knows that who will be the winner. So that's the way this question mark is put up here. So now the miners need to give a proof that they have done some work, okay, which was posed by the network, and before proposing a new block. That means all these three have some transactions that they want to commit into the existing blockchain, but before their transactions are committed into the existing blockchain, they need to perform some task. What is that task? That task is a challenge basically posed by the network. Okay, so the attacker, let's say from the attacker perspective, if I think if the attacker want to attack in proof of work based system, because attacker may also have some kind of transactions that the attacker want to commit, or make these transactions the part of the existing blockchain. So this particular system will give a kind of a discouragement to the attacker to propose a new block, or make changes in the existing block. Why? Because if attacker want to attack in this particular environment, the environment itself using proof of work based system, so the attacker here need to consume the resources, need to consume the physical resources in terms of the CPU utilization, in terms of the memory. So it is a huge loss to the attacker if attacker want to attack in this type of system. But I will tell you in a practical sense, it is not 100% foolproof system. We will discuss some of the lacunas also. If you are having GPUs available, if you are having high performance computing devices available, then computing this difficulty level or computing this nonce value is sometime it is easier for the attacker. Okay, but the inventors of the blockchain or the researchers take this as a research problem, and they come up with their own kind of solutions that we are going to discuss in the next few slides. So what I need to convey to you from this particular slide, in proof of work based system, primarily with the Hashcash based mechanism, the miner who are having some kind of transaction that they want to commit into the existing blockchain, they need to perform some kind of work prior that their block are added into the existing blockchain. In this kind of environment, will give a kind of a discouragement to the attackers to join the part of the network or to propose their own new block. Why? Because they have to consume the resources. Now, moving further, how this, what is the methodology basically? In the previous slide, we have discussed in a broader way, but now we have to go into the narrow down aspects that how this proof of work based system works. Okay, so what is the methodology for Bitcoin based proof of work? Why we have used Bitcoin here? Because in order to explain you how this proof of work based system works, I have taken the example of Bitcoin as a Bitcoin based blockchain basically. Okay, So now, how many blocks we are having here? We are having, let's say 1, 2, 3 or 4 blocks. We are having, let's say 3 blocks are having, and these 3 are the miners who are having some kind of transactions, and these transactions are added into the existing blockchain, and this is the existing blockchain. I again repeat, we are having the existing blockchain, okay, and these are the 3 miners which will take part in the mining procedure, and their transactions are added into the blockchain. So now how this works, how this entire operation works. So I will tell you in a very simple way. First, we are going to discuss some kind of the assumptions, or we can say some kind of acronym that we have defined here. So here, what is the meaning of this PH? This is the previous block hash. We know it very well that blockchain uses the concept of the linked list also. Why the blockchain is using the concept of the linked list? Because in case of the linked list, the next block will carry the hash of the previous block. So similarly here, your entire blockchain, let's say for example, if I take this particular block, this will carry the hash of the previous block. That's the way all the blocks in the blockchains are interlinked together. Okay, so this PH is the previous block hash. This BH is what? This is the block hash, because this particular transaction, inside the block we are having multiple transactions, like transaction number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 6 to 10, then 11 to 14. So every transaction will have their own hash, and every block will have their own hash. So this is the BH correspond to the block hash address. Then PH correspond to the previous block hash address. And because this blockchain is using the concept of the Merkle root, so Merkle root is a separate chapter in our course that we are going to discuss in detail. Maybe Dr. Neeraj is going to discuss it in detail, but I will tell you in a very abstract way. In case of Merkle root, what happened basically, it's a kind of a parent-child relationship. So let's say, for example, if you want to change any of the child, or you want to make any kind of alteration in the already committed transaction, so that means you want to change the hash basically. If you are going to change this particular hash, then the corresponding parent hash is going to be changed, and then the corresponding root is going to be changed. So that means if we are going to change any one transaction in the existing blockchain, this will disturb the entire layout of the blockchain. Okay, so this is the way we can say that the blockchain is a kind of a tamper-proof mechanism. Now, what is this N? This is very important part in the blockchain N. This N correspond to be the norms basically. What exactly the meaning of norms? Norms means which basically this norms is included in every block, and ultimately this is a kind of a difficulty level which was posed by the network. So every miner is trying to take part in the mining procedure for what purpose? Number one, in order to find the solution to the problem, and this solution is what? This is the N basically. So every miner is trying to find out this nonce value which will satisfy certain hash equations are there. Okay, so ultimately this is the layout, or we can say the methodology, how this Bitcoin proof of work based system works. So ultimately the block hash should have certain leading zeros. What is the meaning of these leading zeros? This means from these leading zeros, the more number of leading zero we are having, we are going to make our complex more system. But there is a research question here that if you are putting the more number of zeros in front of your message, okay, then it creates a kind of a burden on the all the miners who want to take part in the mining procedure, because if miner will consume their resources only in terms of getting the value of N, or getting the challenge or solution to the challenge which was posed by the network, then for what purpose, what they are doing after adding their transaction into the existing blockchain? If their resources are consumed only in order to find out this value N that correspond to be the solution of the problem which was posed by the network. So this is a kind of a trade-off situation. You cannot put it as simple. You cannot put it as complex. So this is a kind of a trade-off basically. If you try to make it more complex, then every miner will consume their more resources in order to find out this the value. So this is the way that's the way we can call it as a difficulty level at the beginning. So now let's say if you need to find out the block hash. So this block hash will correspond three things. First one is the previous hash, then the Merkle root, and then the value of n. Previous hash, then the Merkle root, because using the Merkle roots, these transactions are arranged. It's a kind of a parent-child relationship, like we are having one node and then we need to connect to the other node. Okay, similarly, we are doing a kind of a tree structure basically. Okay, so this entire three things. First one is the previous hash, then the Merkle root, and then the n. They all are encapsulated and hashed. Why? Because we do not want to disclose the identity of any of the individual. That's the way we are. Blockchain is using the concept of encoded IDs, and these encoded IDs we can call it as a hash basically. Okay. Now I will tell you in a very simple way that how we are going to take this as a challenge. So what exactly the takeaways from this particular slide? So every miner here try to solve what, try to satisfy the value of n, try to find out the solution, which was or solution to the problem which was posed by the network. Or we can say in other word that miner tries with different values of n to satisfy the difficulty. Okay, and miner who will first find out the value of n for his block, then his or her transactions are added into the existing blockchain. That means I will tell you in a very simple way, whosoever among the miner will solve this difficulty level first, their transactions are added into the existing blockchain first. Okay, now moving further, now we will explain in detail that how this proof of work based system works. In the previous case, we have taken a kind of a entire scenario with respect to the methodology of Bitcoin based proof of work based system. Now we will take in depth what kind of cryptographic primitive this proof of work based system uses. So I believe that Dr. Neeraj has already explained about it that in blockchain uses some of the concept of the basic cryptographic primitives. And what are those basic cryptographic primitives? Like all kind of cryptographic algorithm like SHA-256, MD5, all these message digest or SHA-256, all these are as it is used in the blockchain in order to have a kind of a key pair, public and private key pair kind of combinations. So most of the implementations of Bitcoin proof of work based system uses double SHA-256 function. Okay, and here the miner collect the transactions for approximately, let's say, 10 minutes, which is a kind of a default setup time, and start the mining procedure. That means the miner will have to wait, let's say, for 10 minutes of time, which is a kind of a default setup time, which will be changed depending upon the requirement of the application. Let's say my application is healthcare, then this default setup time is we have to minimize it, because in the healthcare environment there are some kind of the critical patients also where the delay in fetching the required information is directly proportional to the death of a particular patient. Okay, so now the probability of getting a proof of work is low basically. How we can say the probability of getting a proof of work is low? Because initially when this mining procedure is started, we don't know that from among the group of miner, which miner will have the solution or exact solution of the problem which was posed by the network. So initially we cannot tell that it is very difficult to say at the initial level before the start of the mining procedure that which miner will be able to generate the block or which miner will have the solution to the problem posed by the network. So these are the reasons. That's the way we can say the probability of getting the proof of work is low. Because no miner will be able to control at any instant of time in any round in the Bitcoin based proof of work based system. It is not captured or handled by a single person. It is not like that one person is having a kind of a entire control of your network. Otherwise, it's a kind of a biased network. Okay, so ideally it will not happen. And if you refer the literature, then this proof of work based system, we can also call it as a Nakamoto consensus. Why it is called Nakamoto consensus? Because this proof of work based system, or in short, we can call it as a POW, that was coined by the Satoshi Nakamoto. So that's the way it is called the Nakamoto consensus. Now moving further, so if I pose a question to you that how can you justify that the Bitcoin-based proof of work-based systems are tamper-proof? There is no possibility of tampering the data once the transactions are committed inside the blockchain. How can you justify this particular statement? So, in order to get the answer of this question, I have kept a very small segment of the entire blockchain. Let's say, for example, in my blockchain, there are multiple blocks are there. All these blocks are linked together by because they are having a kind of a hash. Because if I say block number 22, it contains the hash of the previous block. So that's the way it is linked basically. Okay. Now this is the previous block, and then we can say that let's say I have considered only some segment of the entire blockchain. So inside the we can say in let's say in blockchain we are having multiple blocks, and inside the block we are having multiple items. So what are those items? What are those attributes that we are going to discuss? We will discuss it again when we are going to discuss the design primitives or the architectural point of view of the blockchain. Then we will come to this topic again. But here I am going to give you an idea in a very abstract level. Then, but when we are going to discuss the design, I am going to discuss the design maybe in the next lecture. Then we will see that what are the different architectural perspective of the blockchain. So now come to the architectural perspective of the block. So let's say this 22, 23 correspond to what? These correspond to the block ID. Okay. Then inside the block, we are having the previous hash. Then we are having the timestamp. Why we are having the timestamp? So this timestamp will decide that that it's a kind of a parameter that up to what time is allocated in order to add the transaction in this particular block. Then we have the transaction root. It uses the concept of Merkle root. That's the way we are having the transaction root here. And then the nonce value, which is the n that we have already discussed in the previous slide. It's a kind of a difficulty level basically. If you set your difficulty level high, then your mining will take more time. If you set your difficulty level low, then mining will take less time. But at the same time, maybe there are some possibility that you are going to compromise with the security of the entire network. So that part we will see in implementation also, because the nature of this course is like that. We are going to start from the theoretical perspective and going up to the implementation. Okay, and then we are having the current hash. This current hash belongs to be the current hash of this particular block. Now, coming to my previous question, that how we can say that the Bitcoin proof of work based system is tamper proof. So the blockchain together contain a large amount of work. That means the work performed by all the miners, those are available or those are the part of the network. So from the attacker perspective, if I think that attacker want to attack a system and that system uses proof of work as a consensus protocol, and we are taking the example as a Bitcoin based network, so how can we say that from the attacker perspective, it is a kind of a tamper-proof mechanism? Now we will see. Let's say if attacker want to attack in this particular proof of work-based system, which is a kind of a permissionless environment, or we can say it's a kind of a public environment where anyone can join the network at any instant of time. So the attacker need to perform more work as compared to the collective, or we can say the greater than the total collective work for already performed by all the miners. Let's say there are 50 miners, okay, in your network, and any attacker want to attack in this particular in this network. So that particular attacker will perform more than the work performed by all the remaining miners. So that means it's a kind of a very difficult activity. And particularly if you are having the current hardware or you are not having the GPUs or high performance computing devices, then it is very difficult to have the solution of this particular problem. But it is not impossible, we can say. Now my voice is audible, ma'am. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, but I am getting some message from now. I think okay. Thank you, ma'am. So it is difficult, we can say, from the attacker perspective, that if attacker want to attack in this proof of work based system, but it is not impossible. How we can say it is not impossible? If you just Google it, just writing this text that use cases where the data of the data stored on the blockchain is compromised, then you will find number of use cases, because this technology is now it's in developing stage. It's not the fully mature technology, but nowadays, depending upon the experiences gained from the previous lacunas that the researchers have already pointed out with respect to the blockchain. So slowly, the researchers have come up with a kind of a novel, and they provided some kind of a patch, and then they run a script in such a way so that the lacuna that they have already faced, or the problem that they have already faced in the previous phase, that they are not going to face it in the next round. And this is the way that we can call it as a tamper-proof based mechanism. But how can I say that it is not impossible? Because if the attacker can invest, or can invest a huge hardware, an attacker can or able attacker is in a position to perform the more work already collectively performed by all the miners. If the attacker is having GPUs available, or the high performance computing devices available, and the attacker can find out the value of the nodes prior to all the miners. So in this is the way that attacker can gain the access of your entire network. But practically, I can say it is very challenging, because timestamp is also allocated. Let's say, how I can say, let's say you want to add a particular transaction. So one timestamp is also allocated. Let's say 2 seconds is allocated in order to complete that particular transaction. So mining will take place within 2 seconds. Attacker will change the data, or if attacker wants to change the data, then the data structure that the blockchain is going to use, it's a kind of a Merkle tree. Then the entire hash is going to be changed. So anyone at any instant of time in the network can see that something is wrong is going on in the network. Because this is the beauty of the blockchain, that at any instant of time, anyone can see what is going on in the network at any instant of time. This is the beauty of the blockchain. Okay, now moving further. So there is one very popular problem in the blockchain that we can call it as a double spending problem. So I will tell you in a very simple way what exactly the meaning of double spending problem, and then we will see that how this proof of work have solved this particular double spending problem. So what exactly the meaning of double spending problem? The meaning of double spending problem is, let's say for example, one attacker, if this is an attacker, let's say I'm just taking an example, and this attacker is only having 10 Bitcoin in his account, okay, and he want to transfer 10 Bitcoin to this particular gentleman and 10 Bitcoin to her, okay. So, but he has only 10 Bitcoin, and he want to initiate 2 transactions of 10 Bitcoin. So, but he's not entitled to initiate this particular transaction. Why? Because he's only having 10 Bitcoin in his account, and he can initiate the transaction 7 Bitcoin, 3 Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoin, or 6 Bitcoin, 4 Bitcoin, but not more than the amount that this particular attacker is having. So this kind of problem in the blockchain, we can call it as a double spending problem. That means when the attacker is successfully using the resources to transfer the same fund twice, okay, so that problem we can call it as a double spending problem. That means a transaction is generated, let's say with Bitcoin 20 to both the Ram and Sita, let's say for example, at the same time, okay. So how this proof of work is going to tackle this particular problem, which was one of the problem in the blockchain based network, that is double spending problem. Because if in case of proof of work based system, the mining is dependent on the computing resources, that whatever be the computing resources you are having, according to that you can take part in the mining procedure. If you are having high performance computing devices, if you are having good computing resources, then your probability that your transactions are added into the blockchain is much more as compared to the other. We will see that this particular statement is also have some kind of drawback that we will see in couple of few slides. So the ultimate solution, how this proof of work is going to solve this double spending problem, is the transactions are basically irreversible. What is the meaning of these transactions are irreversible? That means once you have committed any transactions in the blockchain, you have no right to modify the already committed transaction. If you want to modify the transaction, there is no scope available, but you can initiate a new transaction. So this is the way we can say that computationally it is impractical to modify any already committed transaction. Then every transaction can be validated at any instant of time against the existing blockchain, because this blockchain is using the concept of the distributed ledger. So what exactly the meaning of distributed ledger? Like in your normal banking procedure, you are having the concept of passbook. Okay. Why we are using the passbook concept in the normal banking procedure, in the normal financial institutions? Because later on and at any instant of time, let's say I visit bank and do a kind of entry in my passbook, and I sit silently and just observing that how much amount is debited from my account in the last month, and how much amount I am getting from different sources, or the amount credited to my account. So later on, you cannot deny that you have received this much amount from any person, and you have transferred this much amount from your account to another account. It's a kind of a ledger basically. So similarly in the blockchain, they are maintaining a ledger, but in a different way, which is a kind of a distributed database, that we can call it as a distributed ledger technology. That's the way this blockchain is called as the distributed ledger technology. Okay. So to make the system tamper-proof, this proof of work-based system ensures that double spending problem not occur. Now, moving further. So now, let's say, for example, for a fraction of second, if I assume that a new attack can be occurred in the proof of work-based system, and with respect to the cyber attack, if I talk about, so how this proof of work-based system will handle the cyber attack. Uh, I again repeat that in my all presentations, maybe I'm going to take more than 20 lectures in this particular session, or in this particular course basically. So all my PPTs are in the form of a questions basically, because I believe, because this course I have already taught in MTech students and to the two visiting universities also, like University of Pitești and University of Jan Vysotsky. Finding the resources related to the blockchain is a big hurdle. Like in your traditional subject, listen it very carefully, all of you. In your traditional courses like data structure, design and analysis of algorithm, there are standard books available. If you refer Foreman, you will start from chapter number 1, end up to chapter last chapter. You will find the entire 100% course or more than 90% course related to your curriculum designed from this particular book. But in case of blockchain, because there is no standard book available in the market, there are many books are available, like in the form of edited book or in the form of some kind of authored book. Like I'm not criticizing anybody, but as per my understanding, these all materials are not enough, because they are all diversified and they have collected all the data from the Wikipedia most of the time. And the ultimate way of getting the insights or in-depth knowledge related to the blockchain is the publication houses. You can go to the IEEE, Science Direct, Hindawi, Pillay, and you will find the number of very renowned researchers are working in the field of blockchain, and they have provided a different case studies irrespective of the domain, whether you are working in the you belongs to be the from the computer science or from the electrical or from the electronics. So I advise those are very inclined towards working in the blockchain technology. There is a wide scope available for all of you, because lots of opportunities or lots of problems are already there in the blockchain. And in my subsequent lectures also, I am going to plot some problems to among all of you, and it is then entirely up to you whether you want to take this problem as a challenge, and you want to provide a kind of a solution. Language is not a barrier for blockchain. You can implement blockchain in Java, in Python, or in other language also. Only you need to understand the concept that how the blockchain works and in what way you are going to implement it. That has nothing to do, because in programming, the construct will differ, but the entire philosophy in terms of the technical depth will remain same. Now coming back to the PPT, that how the next attack can be occurred in the proof of work based system. If I take cyber attack as an example, where the attacker attempt to fill the entire network with the client under its control, then the attacker get the control or created a kind of a monopoly in the network. So if this is the case, monopoly is not always a good in terms of the proper growth of a particular network, or we can say the lifetime of a particular network, because if in your network you are having a problem of monopoly, that means your network is not behaving as per the expectation, and network is having a kind of a biased behavior towards a selected group of users. So it will do what? Refuse to rely a valid block. That means, and relay only attack blocks can lead to the double spending problem. So if this is the problem, then it can lead to the double spending problem here. So what are the solutions in order to handle this particular environment where the monopoly remains to be an issue? So the solution is you need to diversify the connections, diversify the connections in terms of what? Let's say if you consider Bitcoin as an example, so Bitcoin allow the outbound connection to one IP basically, and that too per 16 IP addresses. So if I will tell you by taking one simple example, let's say if you have an IP address 172.116, or you can take any number in between, then in this entire network, you can have at most one peer. That means if you diversify the network, then it is expected that attacker may generate multiple false minor. What is the meaning of this multiple false minor? That means they will be in the cluster within the same subnet basically. If they are within the same cluster, or we can say within the same subnet, so they forward the block to multiple nodes rather than cluster of nodes in the same network, which is a kind of a problem basically. Or using this diversify connection, we can solve this particular problem. So this blockchain makes the cyber attack hard to implement on a distributed network. So in case of a distributed network, what we are having? We are having a peer-to-peer network where all nodes are connected to all the remaining nodes, and there is no single party control. There are multiple points of coordination at any instant of time. If we are not getting the data from any of the sources, then other nodes are also there who will take care of the work of the others. So there is no dependency basically. Next one is, it is always possible that multiple attacker, yes, if we consider the scenario of multiple attacker which want to attack on multiple subnets, not only to single subnet, then collectively they can launch the attack in a distributed way. But in real network, it is hard to do it because of the constraints with the IP addresses, also because every machine will have their unique IP addresses. So this is the way how this proof of work based system with respect to the cyber attack can be handled by using a kind of a diversify connection. Now moving further, so now we can say that let's say for example, if I consider in terms of the attack that can be occurred in proof of work based system, let's say if we take the second attack, how this proof of work based system handle the DOS attack, denial of service attack. Let's say I want to access the service of your network in 24/7, but your network is not providing the services 24/7, and network is not behaving as per the expectation for which the network is intended. So how this proof of work based system can handle this particular environment or a particular attack, that we can call it as a denial of service attack. We will see that how. So here the attacker send lots of data to a particular node. Then after having the lots of data received from a particular node, then the nodes will not able to process the normal Bitcoin transactions because it's a kind of a flooded situation. So you need to define certain rules. What are those rules? That means no forwarding of orphan blocks needs to be there, which is a kind of a new word for in the blockchain. I believe that Dr. Neeraj has already covered about the Genesis block also, because it's a kind of a first block. Or let's say if you want to start your blockchain, then if you need to start your blockchain, then in that particular case, the first block of the blockchain, we can call it as a Genesis block. Okay. So Genesis block means what? Genesis block means the first block of the blockchain. We can call it as a Genesis block. Now the second rule is there is no forwarding of double spending transactions. we can neglect it, and there is no forwarding of some kind of basically the same block or the transactions twice. Disconnect, always do a kind of a disconnections a peer that sends too many messages. Restrict the block size to 1 MB, because larger block becomes difficult to verify by the normal nodes. So in less block size, it is very easier to forward the block to many peers in the network. And the last one is you can limit the size of each script up to 1000 bytes. That means how to match the output of a transactions with the input of the next transactions, and higher size open the doors for the attackers. Why? What are these? These are basically the rules in order to avoid the denial of services attack. So this is a very new word for you. Let me explain this. I will take this again, but let me give you a small introduction of it. What is the meaning of orphan block? So in the blockchain, we can call this orphan block as a stele block, or we can say we can call it as a block that are not accepted into the blockchain network due to a time lag in the acceptance of the block. That means there are certain blocks that, let's say, 2 seconds are allocated to add a particular block, but certain blocks are not added into the blockchain within a stipulated time period. So these blocks, because of the time lag, they are not the part of the blockchain. So these blocks we can call it as a orphan block. Okay. So orphan blocks basically are valid and verified blocks, but they have been rejected by the chain sometimes because of some time of the due to the time lag. Because if you consider the example, let's say in your blockchain you have some client of China, you have some client of US, then it's going to be a kind of a problem of the time synchronization also, which is a kind of a next research question for the researchers, that how to synchronize the time synchronization problem in the blockchain. It is a very crucial problem and very difficult to handle this particular problem. Now, moving further, how we can say that there is it possible to break the Bitcoin proof of work based system? How can you give the answer to this particular question? That if I say that is it possible to break the Bitcoin proof of work based system? So Bitcoin proof of work based system is computationally difficult to break, but not impossible. Why not impossible? As I have already told you that if the attacker can deploy high power servers or GPUs or have high performance computing devices and can do more work compared to the work already or collectively done by all the miners, then they then break the Bitcoin proof of work based system is possible. So if you want to refer more, I will advise all of you, you refer this particular case study, although this case study is very old, but very interesting case study. This is ghash.io. If you go to, you just write in the Google ghash.io, which is a kind of a mining pool. That means a set of miners in this mining pool, they are coming together to mine a new block, which is using a kind of a payment fraud against the Bitcoin dice, which is a kind of a gambling website basically. So in this particular environment, you can see that here the double spending attack are launched over the Bitcoin based network. So if you are interested to see that how there is a flexibility, or the attacker have launched the double spending attack over the Bitcoin network, then I advise all of you, please refer this particular use case, and it's a very good use case for all of you. Now moving further, so remember in the previous slides, I have quoted that proof of work based system is not the final one consensus mechanism which is to be used in the permission environment. So what are the problems with the proof of work based system? The first problem is the monopoly problem. So what exactly the meaning of monopoly problem in the proof of work based system? So because you know that the proof of work based system, the mining is dependent on the computing resources that are available to the miner. So whatever be the computing resources the miner will have, according to that you can take part in the mining procedure. That means if you are having more computing resources, you have your transactions are added into the blockchain, the probability is higher. So miner having more resources have more probability to complete the work, or their transactions are added into the blockchain, like the GPU servers, they can do parallel computing of hash, because ultimately what we need to do, we need to find the value of the nodes, or solve the difficulty which was posed by the network. So the worst part of this monopoly problem, which was one of the problem in the proof of work based system, is that this monopoly can increase over time. How can I say that this monopoly can increase over time? So let's say, for example, in your network you are having 50 nodes. Okay, initially all the 50 nodes take part in the mining procedure. Okay, and let's say some group of miners are having GPU processors available. So, but obvious, they can compute the this value of the nodes or solve the challenge which was posed by the network very fastly as compared to the other miners. Okay, if this is the case, then in round one, their transactions are added into the blockchain. Now let's start the round two of mining. Okay. Now in the round two of mining, again, this is the scenario that only this group transactions are added into the existing blockchain. So this is a kind of a biased environment, and this problem, we can call it as a monopoly problem in the proof of work based system. And the drastic situation here is what? The over transaction by transaction, it give a kind of a discouragement among the miners, that what is the purpose to take part in the mining procedure if our transactions are not added into the blockchain? Because in our group we are having some person, those are having the high performance computing devices, so their probability of getting their transaction is much more higher. So in order to solve this particular problem, the reward concept will come into the blockchain, that what happened out of the 50, only one will win. What about the rest of the 49? Because they have also take part in the mining procedure. And once they have taken part in the mining procedure, that means their resources, they have consumed their resources in terms of their computing resources, in terms of their memory utilization. So what kind of incentive you are giving to them for their part in the for their, because they are taking the part in the mining procedure. So for this particular purpose, this reward concept will come into picture in order to break this monopoly problem. Okay, so this type of problem may arise in the existing Bitcoin network, where the few miner with large computing resources may get the control over the network. So this is not good. Okay, we will discuss the solution of this particular problem in the couple of few slides also. Another problem in the proof of work based system is a power consumption problem. What exactly the meaning of power consumption problem? Uh, because in the proof of work based system, the mining is solely dependent on what? The mining is dependent on the computing resources the miner will have. Okay, so that means the miner will consume their computing resources. That means it's a kind of a power consumption basically. If you see this particular graph, what I need to show to you people in this particular graph, let's say over the x-axis we are having years, and over the y-axis we are having the estimated energy basically. Okay, which is in terawatt per year basically. So if you see this, the nature of this particular curve is that over a period of time the power consumption is increases. So this will give a kind of a indication that if the system is going to take the proof of work in order to frame out the consensus only, this is not going to help us, because it's a kind of a power, it consumes more power. So now these are the two problems with respect to the proof of work based system. The first problem is the monopoly problem. Second problem is the power consumption problem. So now, how these two problems are solved with respect to the proof of work? Because so far I just giving you a recap. We have discussed about the proof of work based system, where we have faced two problems. One is the monopoly problem. Second one is the power consumption problem. So how to handle this monopoly and power consumption problem related to the proof of work? So in order to handle this particular problem, these two problems, there is a separate class of consensus protocol that we can call it as a proof of stake basically. So what exactly the meaning of stake? I will tell you in a very simple way first, then we will move to the technical depth of it, how it works. So stake means what? So whatever amount of Bitcoin you are having, let's say whatever amount of Bitcoin the miner will have, according to that, the miner will take part in the mining procedure. It is not like that the computing resources. So let's say, for example, there are 50 nodes in your network, okay, and these 50 nodes are having separate distribution of the Bitcoin. Let's say one node will have the 10% of the entire worth of the network in terms of the Bitcoin. So that particular miner will take part only 10% times their transactions are added into the blockchain, not more than that. So this will reduce the overhead. This will reduce the overhead basically, and this will reduce the monopoly problem also. This will rectify the monopoly problem also. So, in order to solve these two problems, there was a new class of consensus protocol, which we can call it as a proof of stake or POS. This was proposed in the year of 2011 by the member of the Bitcoin forum. So here, in order to make a transaction from the proof of work to POS when Bitcoins are widely distributed. So if we need to compare the proof of work and proof of stake, so in case of proof of work, the probability of mining a new block is dependent on the work done by the miners. So adding a new block depending upon the computing resources of the miner. But at the same time, if we compare this proof of work with the proof of stake, here in case of proof of stake, the amount of Bitcoin the miner will have, according to that, the mining procedure will start. Okay, so let's say, for example, miner holding 1% of the Bitcoin can mine only 1% of the proof of stake block, not more than that. So by using this particular mechanism, this monopoly problem we can avoid this monopoly problem. Okay, although this kind of environment will have its own pros and cons that we are going to discuss in couple of few slides. Okay, so now moving further, now we will see how this proof of stake based system works. So it provides increased protection. Let's say, for example, from the perspective of attacker, if I think that executing an attack is expensive in the proof of stake based system, because you need more Bitcoins if you want to generate more blocks, because in case of proof of stake, mining is dependent on what? Mining is dependent on the amount of Bitcoin the miner will have. If you are having more Bitcoin, then you have the more chances that your transactions are added into the blockchain. So mining is dependent on the stake basically. Stake in terms of what? Stake in terms of the of your holding the Bitcoin basically. So the executing an attack from the perspective of the attacker is expensive, but a reduced incentive here is for attack basically. Why? Because in this particular environment, the attacker need to own a majority of the Bitcoin. When the attacker want to attack or an attack will have more effect on the attacker. Okay, so there are different variants of the stake or wealth. If you refer the literature, there is one property of the randomization in combination of stake also that is used in the next and black coin, which is a kind of a cryptocurrency system. In the coinage also, where the number of coins are multiplied by the number of days the coins have been held, it is used in a kind of a new cryptocurrency that is peer coin. Also, you have to hold the Bitcoin for certain duration. So ultimately, the gist of this slide is, in case of proof of stake, the mining is dependent on the amount of Bitcoin the miner will hold. Now, moving further, next class of consensus protocol is the proof of work. Okay, so just a minute. So in case of proof of burn, the miner should show a proof that they have burned some coin. So instead of having the computing resources, instead of having the amount of Bitcoin in the form of the stake, here the whole thing are dependent on the burning basically. Burn means what? That the miner have spent some kind of Bitcoin to a verifiable unspendable address where no one will be able to spend the Bitcoin. So if we compare this proof of burn, so proof of burn is expensive, just like the proof of work, but no external resources are used other than the burn coin. So in case of proof of burn, we are not using any kind of external resources in terms of the memory or CPU utilization. We are consuming only the digital or virtual resources. In case of proof of burn, which are the Bitcoins. So attacker have huge loss of Bitcoins if the attacker want to attack in the proof of burn based system. Okay. So how can we say that the proof of burn based system are power efficient? How can we justify this particular statement that the proof of burn based systems are power efficient? Because if you see the basic nature of the proof of burn based system or the basic characteristics of the proof of burn based system, you are not utilizing the physical hardware to do the work, but spending the virtual or digital resources or digital currencies for the same. That's why this is the reason it is efficient in terms of the power consumption, because you are not consuming the physical resources, you are consuming only the digital or virtual resources. So if you need to compare, differentiate between the proof of work and proof of burn based system, so it is just like a comparison between the real resources and the virtual or digital resources. So in proof of work, we are having the consuming the real resources. In proof of burn, we are consuming the digital or virtual resources. So proof of burn works by burning proof of work. Mine cryptocurrencies means through proof of work, everyone have some currencies, then you can apply the proof of burn. It is just like that, you can apply the proof of burn over the top of the proof of work in order to have a layer of security, one level, two level. Okay. Now, whatever I have communicated to all of you, there is we can say there is a kind of a comparison. From this particular slide, I will try to give you a kind of a comparative analysis of all the consensus protocols that are to be applicable for the permissionless environment. If my environment is public environment. So first one is POW, then the POS, and then the POB. So in the case of proof of work, the mining is dependent on the if you do some work to mine a new block, means the finding the hash function. Here in case of proof of stake, acquire some sufficient stake to mine a new block, means prove you have certain bitcoins to participate. And in case of proof of burn some wealth to mine a new block. That means you have to spend certain bitcoin rather than the physical currency to participate. So in proof of work, we consume the physical resources like CPU power and time. And in case of proof of stake, we consume no external resources but participate in the transactions. And in case of proof of burn, it consumes the virtual or digital resources like in the form of coins. And in case of proof of work, it is power hungry, and proof of stake is power efficient, and proof of burn is power efficient because you are burning the virtual or the virtual currencies, not the physical. So this is the comparative analysis of the consensus protocol so far we have discussed. Okay. Now moving further, the last category of consensus protocol that are directly applicable to the permission environment is the POET, or we can call it as a proof of elapsed time. So this was proposed by Intel as a part of their Intel blockchain environment, which we can also call it as a Hyperledger Sawtooth, which is one of the blockchain platform, which is to be used by the developers in order to develop decentralized applications. So in your course, if you see the entire structure of your course, we have one full chapter on the Hyperledger also. So that maybe next to next week, we are going to start this Hyperledger also. And we are going to devote at least 4 hours on the Hyperledger with one implementation and one case study and basic fundamentals and the different variants. Okay. So now, what is the basic idea of this proof of last time? So here the basic idea is, let's say for example, every miner, let's say in your network, you are having 50 nodes, okay? So all 50 nodes will wait for, let's say for some random amount of time. Why they have to wait for, let's say for some random amount of time? They want to hear that someone else is going to propose their viewpoint. Their viewpoint means what? Someone else is going to propose their block or add their block into the existing blockchain. So the first participant to finish become the leader of the for the new block. That means whosoever will complete this waiting time first become the leader of the new block creation or for that particular round. So this is not going to be a viable solution. Why? Let's say, for example, in a realistic scenario, if you compare two persons simultaneously at the same time claiming that, hey, I have waited, let's say, for 120 seconds, and you have also waited for, let's say, 120 seconds, and both of you are claiming at the same time that both are waited for, let's say, 120 seconds. So how the system will compare that which one is telling a lie and which one telling a truth? Okay, so this is going to be a very tough for the system to decide that who is telling a lie and who is telling a truth. Okay, so this is going to be a problem or going to be a challenge. So ultimately, what is the challenge here? The challenge is how will one verify that the proposer has really waited for a random amount of time? Okay, so in this particular way, we can say that if it is a software control system, so initially Intel developed this entire ecosystem controlled by the software. Okay, then they feel that this will give a kind of a alarm to them that attacker can if gain the access of the entire network and can make some kind of changes in their code and can claim that hey, I have waited, let's say, for 120 seconds before participating in the mining procedure, and we know that the person is telling a lie, but he has already made some kind of changes in the software and claiming that he has waited, let's say, for 120 seconds in the mining procedure. So this is the kind of a lacuna that they face. Then, in order to rectify this, they need to do a kind of a verification. So for the verification, they Intel develop a kind of a CPU instruction set, and this CPU instruction set they call it as a Intel software guard extension (SGX), which is a kind of a trusted execution platform, and which is hardware controlled basically, not software controlled. So Intel believe that the trusted code is private to the rest of the application, so it is hardware control, not the software control. So there are less chances of having some kind of attacks. So the specialized hardware provides an attestation that the trusted code has been set up correctly, and we can say finally that the proof of last time POET, if I compare this POET works in a both the environment, whether my environment is permission environment or my environment is permissionless environment. But this proof of work, proof of stake, and proof of burn, they are primarily used for the permissionless environment. So this is about the interesting part of the. If you want to refer about more about the this consensus mechanism, then you can go to this particular proposal framed out for the proof of stake. Then this is the interesting proposal for the proof of burn, and this is for the hyperledger sawtooth. Okay, so this is the end of this particular presentation. So for your understanding, I have kept some questions basically. Now in the next 20 minutes, we are going to discuss. So far, I believe that Dr. Neeraj has already covered two lectures, fundamental lectures related to the blockchain, and I have covered one lecture of 1 hour related to the consensus protocol that are applicable to the permission-less environment. We have not discussed about the permission environment that we are going to discuss in the next lecture. And in the next lecture, we are going to start the implementation also. So in the next 20 to 30 minutes, we are going to take just a recap because I believe that there is a scarcity of the resources related to the blockchain. So we have prepared this course in such a way that it will give you a kind of a flavor related to the theoretical context, also some kind of recapping in the form of questions also, or some kind of implementations also. So in nutshell, it's a kind of a complete package for all of you. Okay, so now see this particular question and think for a minute. I will give you only 1 minute. I'm not wasting the time. So how longest chain are determined in the Bitcoin? So how the longest chain are determined in the Bitcoin? If you want to have the answer of this particular question, that how the longest chains are determined in the Bitcoin based of network. So in order to have what is the meaning of basically the longest chain, in the blockchain network, there are some possibilities that starting from the genesis block up to the last block, because of some network failure, because of some crash fault, we are not getting any kind of connectivity, and your chain is break. Let's say in your healthcare environment, you have separate chain of clinician, you have separate chain of doctors. Okay, so in the blockchain, we are using the concept of the longest chain. So my question is how you are going to how the longest chain are determined in the Bitcoin on basis of what you have to decide or you have to decide the longest chains in the Bitcoin based network. So we will see the answer to this question. So the longest chains are not determined by the maximum number of blocks in the blockchain. It is not as simple. Yes, very good. Very good. So it is determined by the total work done by all the miners in terms of the proof of work for mining all the blocks in the chain. So note here, an interesting point to note down here is that the work done is a function of mining difficulty basically. You are making your mining procedure more difficult, so you are going to increase the security, but at the same time, in order to solve this difficulty level, the computing resources, all kind of resources, the miners will have to invest. Okay, so it's a kind of a trade-off, basically how much complex you are going to set it. Okay, so in the next lecture, I will tell you in a practical aspect when we go for the implementation that if I set the difficulty level 3, then mining will take, let's say, for example, yes, that depends on the hashing. Very good. So the intuition behind selecting the chain with the maximum work is that because such a chain will be more difficult to tamper as you have to do more work. If you are not selecting the longest chain, you are selecting the shorter chain, then there are chances of the attack. Okay. So now moving further, next question for you is I will give you 2 minutes to think the answer for this particular question. I know we are in the online mode and you just Google it, you will find some kind of link also, but that is okay. This will clear your understanding also that what exactly the meaning of. So the next question is what are the orphan blocks and how to remove them? What do you mean by orphan block? I have already told you in my session what is the meaning of orphan block and how you are going to remove them, or we are not in a position to remove them. You write in the chat window, no problem. I am in a position to read out whatever you have written. So what do you mean by basically the orphan blocks and how to remove them? Or I will slightly change this question that blocks rejected due to the time lag in. Very good. Time lag in acceptance. Very good. Very good. So I'm getting the answer, exact answer to this particular question. So the block from one, let me see the answer that are not block there. Yes. So the block from one block. So the block from one of the miners who will pass the difficulty posed by the network will be part of the longest chain. Other will be marked as the orphan block and will not be used. Okay, so that means we can say, let's say for example in your blockchain you are having the lag blocks and by dropping packets. Very good. So moreover, if there is a transaction inside an orphan block, then it should also be there in one of the valid block also. So the miner look whether the broadcasted transactions have been included in one of the valid block, nor the orphan block. So if not, they include them in the next mined block. So the orphan blocks can be removed afterwards. Before that, we are not in a position to remove the orphan blocks. So let me check the block network D2. Yes, very good. So now next question. Next question: can a miner propose a invalid block? Can a miner? Let me just clarify. I believe that Dr. Neeraj has already covered about what is the miner. So I will give you a clue. Who is the miner? Miner is the node, because in the blockchain we are having 3 category of node. First category is the miner node. So miner node is responsible for making the verification, validation of the committed transactions, or those are in the waiting to be committed. Okay. So now my question is, can a miner propose an invalid block? Yes or no? If yes, how? If no, why? I am getting some answers. No, because he has to do all work in all the miners. Any other answer? A miner can propose an invalid block, but it is up to the organizer. So now see the answer. The minor are normal nodes basically. So it is highly possible that a minor is an adversary or it proposes an invalid block, a block with invalid transactions. What exactly the meaning of this invalid block? Invalid block means what? A block that contains an invalid transactions. Okay. So now the minors are basically the normal nodes. So it is highly possible that a minor is an adversary. So I will tell you in a different context. It is in a real time sense, it is very much right that let's say in your network you have 50 nodes. Okay. So at the entry point of your network, you have developed a kind of a access control mechanism, whether it's a kind of a password based or iris based or authentication based mechanism. Okay. So in this particular case, you have to keep a kind of a authentication mechanism and you are going to check the authenticity of each and every individual node, whether the node is the part of the network or authorized user or not. So it practically happens many times that when the authentication process is over, I again repeat, when the authentication process is over, any of the node started behaving maliciously. It happens practically. And it is very tedious to manage in the blockchain network. If the authentication process is over, how can you identify, how can you locate, how can you trace? It is very stringent to manage this particular environment once the authentication process is over and any of the node started behaving maliciously. Okay, so that's the way we can say that the minors are basically the normal node. So it is highly possible that a minor is an adversary and it proposes an invalid block. So yes, minor can propose an invalid block in every round or in any round, we can say. There are possibilities. Now, next question. What if a minor proposes an invalid block related to this particular question? Let's say if any of the minor proposes an invalid block, then what happens? Then what is the problem? What problem your network is going to face? In what sense? If a minor proposes an invalid block? What if a minor proposes an invalid block? Yes, tell me the answer. What happens if a minor proposes an invalid block? So now let's say the invalid block, let's say if any of the minor proposes an invalid block, how the scenario we have already discussed, after the authentication process is over, any of the nodes started behaving maliciously. So the invalid block gets propagated to the network, but obvious because it's a kind of a P2P network. So whenever a node receives a new block, it does the following before including into the blockchain. Number one, validate all the transactions again in the block. Ensure that the block does not have any double spending transactions. Check the block is not a replay and is signed by originator, or check the hash and the nonce of the block. That means verification of the block. So if the miner proposes an invalid block, then but obvious this invalid block is propagated to the network. And whenever it is going to be propagated into the network, but before adding this into the existing blockchain, we have to ensure these many things, A, B, C, and D. A means we have to validate the transactions associated with that particular block. We have to ensure that block does not have any double spending problem. We also ensure that check the block is not a kind of a replay and is signed by the originator, and check the hash and the nonce of the block. Now, again, this is the reason that you need sufficient transparency. You need to store all transactions in your local machine. This is the reason why we are going to use the concept of distributed ledger technology. If at this particular instant of time, if I pose a question to all of you, why blockchain is called the distributed ledger technology? Why the blockchain is called the distributed ledger technology, or why the blockchain is using the distributed ledger? So this is the reason why the blockchain, because in the later situation, in case of any problem, this distributed ledger is going to be referred, and according to the entries, they are available in your local machine. We have to take the appropriate decisions. Okay. Now moving further, next questions, two questions I have posed here. I will give you 2 minutes. How does the first block in the blockchain get created? And how does the first node in the blockchain gets created? And we can call this block as what? This block is known as, very good, Genesis block. Now, how does the first node in the blockchain gets created? So it has been created manually because you have to start your blockchain, and that's the way we can call it as a Genesis block. Okay. Now, next question, how is it possible to have the copy of public ledger which is increasing day by day for every client? Okay. So if I have this particular question and I'm just twisting this particular question in a different context, but the meaning will remain same. Let's say, for example, if you have, let's say, similar question, if the size of the blockchain is few hundred GBs, then how do everyone store the blockchain in their local machines? I again repeat the question, how is it possible to have the copy of public ledger which is increasing day by day? Why? Because number of transactions are day by day adding into the existing blockchain, and if you refer the current size of the blockchain, so it is very huge. Is it so how is it possible to have the copy? Okay, so for reducing the size of the block, if you want to reduce the size of the block, several compaction techniques are there in the blockchain which we have to use. One such technique is the sharding. Okay, so according to that, we can have the possibility to have the copy of the public ledger. So we are going to use the concept of sharding in order to tackle the size of the entire blockchain. So I advise all of you, we are going to discuss this particular in the subsequent lecture. But if you are more interested to refer this, then I advise all of you, please refer this particular URL. Okay, or you just Google it that how we are going to have a kind of a copy of the public ledger received from each client, which is a ever evolving data day by day. Okay, now moving further, some of the questions we are going to take and then we will stop. Okay, so can the attacker tamper the last block? From the attacker perspective, if I am thinking that in your blockchain there are 24 blocks, so can the attacker tamper the 24th block? Can the attacker tamper the last block? Or in your blockchain, if you are having 24 block, let's say for example, so can the attacker tamper the 24th number block, the data available or the transactions available inside the 24th block? So for this particular purpose, to get the answer to this particular question, you have to prove a kind of a hypothesis, and the hypothesis is like that the mining requires some time basically, because in mining we have to allocate some time depending upon the algorithm that we are going to use to perform the mining. So say the last block has been propagated in the network. When the miner observe a new block, they start working on the next block to be mined. So by the time the attacker make an kind of an alteration in the last block and propagate an altered block to that block, basically altered copy of that block, a correct new block has been mined and added to the blockchain with the correct last block. So this is a kind of a hypothesis. I again repeat, in the mining procedure, one time stamp is allocated to the mining procedure. According to that, the mining will start. Okay. Now, let's say the last block, 24th block has been propagated in the network. When the miner observe a 24th block is added, they start working on the next block, okay, to be mined. So by the time which is allocated to be the mining time, the attacker makes an alteration in the last block, block number 24, and propagate an altered copy of that block, which is a 24th number block. I am just taking an example to understand you. A correct new block has been mined because mining has already started, and the added to the existing blockchain with the correct last block. So this is the way that we can say that the attacker cannot attack on the last block, okay, because there are less chances to attack. Now, so adversary has to change this new block as well, and procedure goes on up to the, if we need to extend it. So therefore, it would be extremely difficult, we can say, although theoretically not impossible, for an attacker to make a changes even in the last block. Okay. So now, with this, I think we will stop, and we will take next questions, few other questions in the next lecture. And in the next lecture, we are going to take some kind of implementation, like how you are going to validate the hash, how you are going to create the blockchain, how you are going to create the proof of work. So we are going to take one by one. We are not in a hurry because it's a 40-hour course. So we will go and we have to complete this entire course within March only. Okay. So thank you very much, Sakshi. And I am just stop sharing here. And in case we have any questions, so I am happy to answer these questions. Otherwise, side by side, I have already given the answers. Sakshi, we have any questions?
Can you have a copy of the slides?
Yeah, I have the copy of the slide, and I will hand over after the entire course to the organizer. No problem at all. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, Santa this side, I have a question. So from the public news and supporting evidence, Ethereum is going proof of stake from probably next year. So when a currency moves from proof of work to proof of stake, and if a person has a good amount of currency in his or her wallet, wouldn't that make it a bit monopolized? Because further, when it gets converted to proof of stake, he's the only one person who can mine in the majority.
So that's the way, very right question, very appropriate question. That's the way we can say that nowadays the entire blockchain is not focusing on the proof of work or proof of stake. So let's say they are on the top of that, they are making some kind of assumptions, or they are using another consensus mechanisms also. They are the very primary and basic consensus mechanism. So mining will start from the proof of work, and then proof of stake, then proof of one, proof of last time. So it is layer-wise security we are going to maintain. Maybe there are possibility that you have a kind of a monopoly problem in case of a proof of one, proof of work-based system, which will be rectified by the proof of stake-based system. We have some kind of problem like let's say a kind of a segment or group is having a kind of a major holding of the entire network. So this is again not good for the entire network. So on the top of that, we have to make another kind of consensus mechanism. So if you refer the literature, if you just Google it, you will find a long list of consensus mechanisms. Why? Because people have devised their own consensus mechanism depending upon their requirement also. And in this particular list of consensus mechanisms, you are surprised to see that many of the consensus mechanisms are no longer available right now. People have just invented them, they have used for their applications. No one has used these consensus mechanisms because they are not supporting to their environment. So my advice is like that. On the top of that, you have to do a kind of a layer-wise security. Okay. Only this proof of stake is not going to solve your purpose.
Understood. And one last question:
please.
Is POET centralized? Because SGX sort of makes it centralized.
Centralized in terms of what you are saying?
For example, if something goes wrong, you have to use SGX and some sort of authorization access.
Try to give the answer to your question. I will pose one question, very simple question to you. Okay. Let's say I say that I say that in terms of the storage capability. Okay, blockchain is a kind of a centralized system, decentralized system. In terms of the storage capability, blockchain is a kind of a decentralized system. Yes or no?
Yeah, it is.
It is. But from the perspective of, let's say, for example, the user access, now it's a centralized or decentralized.
I still feel it's decentralized because the validation occurs from decentralized node.
Yeah. But in most of the applications, if you see, na, this decentralization, and I will tell you in a very simple way, this blockchain technology, which is a kind of a distributed technology or decentralized technology, is not going to replace the centralized technology. Believe me. Why? Because there are certain situations where the centralized solutions are performing much more better as compared to the decentralized systems. Okay, so again, you have to look for the solution that you need to compromise with the security. Number one. Number two, you need to compromise with the cost. Number three, you need to compromise with the privacy. So you need to define your metric, and according to that, you can say that no, I need to go with the centralized system or I need to go with the decentralized system. So for this particular case, I have kept one PPT for you in what scenario you need to apply the blockchain. It is not like that blockchain is a kind of a fascinating technology or a fascinating word and you apply the blockchain in every segment of the industry. No, it is not like that. Sometimes you are applying the blockchain in a different context and it will not give you the favorable result, whether it's a kind of a transparency or whether it's a kind of a costing analysis. So I have kept one PPT for you to open your thinking that how you are going to adopt and see the possibility whether the blockchain is the right candidate for this particular scenario or not. Okay,
Understood, sir. Thank you.
welcome. So any other questions, Sakshi?
So anyone having any other question?
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
About mining. Is mining done by like individuals, or is it done through a software?
No, you have two mechanisms for that where you can, it depending upon the mode where you want to use it. Let's say, for example, if I consider healthcare as an environment, okay, and in the healthcare environment, my task is I want to secure the electronic healthcare record of a particular patient because as a patient, I do not want to disclose my identity. I do not want to disclose my disease. Okay. So for that particular environment, my task is like that. I need to preserve the privacy. Okay. So you can go with the software controlled environment also. Okay. But for financial application, let's say, for example, you can go in a software environment, but much in a restricted way. It is not solely on the software controlled environment. If you give this kind of freedom, then you are giving a kind of a opening platform for the intruders. Hey, you are just giving a kind of invitation. Hey, come and perform some kind of malicious activity. Okay, so this is a kind of a way we can say that some kind of adjustment you need to do. Okay, according to the application specific nature where you want to apply the blockchain. And this mining has nothing to do with your data mining. Data mining part is separate. Okay, in data mining we have a different perspective, and here the mining procedure is we are having a different perspective. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sakshi, I think we end today. We are going to end this session here, and in the next session we are going to take some of the interesting implementations and some of the case studies. Okay. So thank you very much to all of you for patiently listening to me, and I believe that you all have enjoyed. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sudeep sir.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
And your attendance link has been shared in the window, in the chat window. So everyone, please mark your attendance on time.